Hello everyone, it's Karen at the Cool Tools Studio, and I'm here today to share a quick metal clay technique video. I always love finding a new way to use a tool I already have, and that's what I'm up to today. We're going to be using finishing touches molds to make small fine silver beads. Here's what you need for this technique: a clay board, some tough cards, a pair of tweezers, a hand drill, and some drill bits. Then you need to select your clay. I'm recommending using either FS999 or EZ960 for this project because we're drilling in greenware, and Phoenix is very firm in greenware and a little bit more difficult to drill. You don't need it, but having some syringe clay on hand will make this a little bit quicker and easier. And then you need to select your finishing touches mold. You want to make sure you select one that's got enough body to it for you to be able to drill through it without breaking through the side material. I've had good luck with the teardrops, guardian stars, hearts, stars, leaves, and butterflies. You need a clay shaper or a palette knife for use for applying clay into your finishing touches molds, and then just a dish with some water and a brush. To make these beads, I apply the clay to the finishing touches molds just like I would if I was making an accent. So I just take a pinch of my clay, and then I like to kind of pre-set it, and you don't need to put any cool slip or release agent on these molds when you're applying the clay. And then I push down and drag back. And since we are doubling these up to make a bead, you need to make twice as many elements as you would like beads. So today I'm going to make 4 of the large beads. So I'm going to make 8 little guardian stars. And then I come back and I swipe over to remove the excess material. And then I'll just kind of take my extra clay and pick up and remove the wet clay from the stars that I didn't fill completely. And just for variety, while I'm at it, I'm going to make a couple of the smaller ones as well. And again, I'm pushing down and dragging back, and you can rotate your molds to make sure you're filling out to all corners if that's helpful. And when I scrape, I like to come straight up and down for the scrape. Get things nice and clean. Do a couple small ones too. And for this mold, even the small ones have enough material to make beads out of. Some of them, only the 2 largest are deep enough to make beads, and there are probably some molds that just in general I wouldn't recommend to make beads. Just kind of use your discretion on how big of a hole you need and if your pieces will be able to accommodate that. So in rotating my mold, I saw these corners from scraping kind of popped up a bit, so I'm just going to come back in, put a bit more material and drag this way, and now they're perfect. So before I move on, I'm going to allow these guardian star elements to dry completely. So I'm taking them off to a hot pad. Once these have dried completely, we're ready to start assembling our beads. And for that, I've got a dish with some water and a small brush, and then I also have some syringe. You definitely don't have to have syringe. You could just use lump clay that you've thinned out a little bit with some water to make a paste, or you could use paste, but the syringe is the most direct and quick way to go about it, so that's what I'm going to show today. Usually when you've dried your finishing touches, you just kind of flip them out, but I actually found that for assembling your beads, it's easier to leave half of them in the molds and kind of let the mold support it than holding the tiny little form with your fingers. So I've got my damp brush, and I'm applying water to half of the elements, so just one side here. I'm just kind of working it in a little quickly, and then I'm taking my syringe. I did the aqua tip just so enough comes out to get things together without putting too much excess material there. And I'm just kind of extruding a little line on the middle of them. Sometimes when you're putting it on a slippery surface, it kind of slides around a bit. It'd be handy to have a brush to coax it where you need it to go. And then I'm really quickly going to take my damp brush and scoot if I need to. Have it kind of generally center. And then I'm coming in with some tweezers and I'm picking up the other half and I'm lining it up with the form underneath it. And then applying a little bit of pressure downward with my finger. And I'm just going to repeat that process down the line here, and then for as many beads as you would like to make. Once I've joined my two halves, I'm going to pop them all out of the mold and then take them off to dry. And they just dry a little bit faster when they're not surrounded by the silicone mold. So now that our two halves have dried to create one little bead shape, we're ready to drill a hole. And I always like to start out with a smaller hole and make kind of a pilot hole before moving on and drilling out the full size that I would like. So I'm starting out with this white tipped drill bit. And these shapes are kind of fun too, because you can either choose to go through just this top portion here and kind of have it hang with this pointing to the top, or you could drill straight through the center there. So there's a couple options, and there's a lot of shapes that you can kind of play around with in that same way. But I usually kind of look for the halfway point where the two halves joined, and then I'm just very gently applying some pressure and twisting. And I'm just looking for my drill bit to pop out the other side there, and then I'm going to back it up and swap out to the larger size drill bit. And the pink that I'm using today, once the FS999 or a clay with a similar shrink rate has fired, these holes will accommodate 22 gauge wire and most elastic threads pretty handily. So then sometimes it leaves like a little bit of a burr on the end there. I'll just kind of knock that out really quickly. Make sure my ends are looking clear on both sides. So basically just repeat that to as many beads as you like, and then you're ready to fire them. Since these are so small and they're not hollow or anything, they don't need any support while they're being fired. You can just fire them directly on a ceramic kiln shelf. And since I'm working with FS999 today, I'm firing to 1650 for 2 hours. Once your beads have fired, you're ready to finish them however you'd like. I've got them here slid on some 22 gauge wire, and I did that because I wanted to tumble them. So what you can do then is just slide them on the wire and then twist and then tumble them all together. That way you don't have to dig through your tumbler to try to find teeny tiny beads. You can also darken your beads with a patina. I used some patina gel on some of these butterflies that I then incorporated into a little beaded bracelet. And there's just so many options and so many finishing touches and so many beads that you can create and incorporate into really any project. Sometimes you make a pendant and you just think it looks kind of lonely on the chain, maybe it needs a little something to balance it out. You could create some beads to accent some elements on your pendant. There's just so many options for this technique.